Springfield's Talk 104.1. Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday. That means it's Lunch Bunch Day for us.
Lunch bunch?
Yes.
What are you getting?
Well, I was thinking about a delicious salad today. You know, I had the sliders last week, but then I was eating the salads. Boy, when the thing about Retro Metro lunch, the salad can actually legitimately be 2 meals if you have something to top it. Like I get the chicken, the grilled chicken.
Yeah.
You could save that for separate and have, but I eat it all at once.
Yeah, I do that too. I get the salmon, and it is delicious.
It is delicious, and I had pizza last night, so I'll probably not have their
pizzas
pizza.
are really good.
pizzas
Have
are
you had
good.
their new one yet?
I have not had their new one.
I don't think I have either.
I think on the 6th they're updating their menu again.
Again?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, it goes by quickly. That was one thing I love about Retro Metro is they update their menu. It seems like quarterly, sort of with the seasons to some degree. And it isn't a full-blown wipe everything off and replace it with all new. You just get sometimes variations. One or two new things, and then sometimes updates. It's one of the cool things about Retro Metro is they design their own offerings. It's not cookie cutter stuff like you get at a lot of restaurants. They have their own chef, and so they craft their different meals. If you haven't signed up for Lunch Bunch, go to ksgf.com. You can get signed up, and if your name is drawn, you'll be contacted, and you and up to 5 friends of your choosing will join Sarah and me on a Wednesday. Now, this Friday, we will have happy hour at Retro Metro as well. 4 to 6. It's just hang out, have a good time. I'll have a pair of tickets to see the Doobie Brothers at Thunder Ridge. That is coming up in September.
Do I need to make the graphic for that? I'm taking that as a yes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Might as well.
I'll do that.
We'll have on-site registration. She's talking about a little sign so you see.
So you know right where to register.
So you know where to register. We'll have a little box set up and you can register, and then we will draw at 6 o'clock. And actually, I have the physical tickets. The folks from Thunder Ridge were here recently, and they just gave me a pair. So I have those on hand, and we will be giving those away Friday, 4 to 6. And I think that's all the information I have about that. Let's see. So today we are going to talk with Attorney General Andrew Bailey. We're also going to talk to the gentleman known. Trying to get all my information. What is this over here? Oh, that's different. I don't need that. America's Sheriff Mark Lamb. Throughout the morning. If you miss either of these discussions that we have with them, of course, we'll have the podcast up, and the relevance, of course, things that are going on in the country currently, but also they are going to be 2 of the individuals that will be at the Christian County Republican Central Committee Lincoln Days, April 12th. The Christian County Sheriff Brad Cole will also be there. I think some other sheriffs may as well for sort of a forum, a Q&A. You can buy tickets for the event, $60. That covers dinner as well. It is going to be, again, in the evening on April 12th. That's a Saturday, Ozarks Event Center in Nixa. Go to ccrccmo.com to get your tickets, and while you're there, you can also purchase raffle tickets, $10 a piece for your chance to win one of 2 Black Rain rifles, one donated by MJ Golden Coin in Nixa, the other donated by Black Rain Ordnance themselves. And you can get 5, it's either 10 a piece or 6 for $50. So basically, buy 5, get 1 free. You can also purchase them that evening, and they, once again, have generously offered KSGF a table, and that table will potentially be for you. You can text the word Lincoln to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 417-447-KSGF, and that will register you to win a pair of tickets, and the table seats 8, so we'll give away 4 pairs. Thursday is the deadline to get registered for that. Okay. Did I cover? I covered a lot there, didn't I?
I think so. I think you got it.
I feel like I did a good job covering that stuff. Thank you very much. Okay, a couple things that there were a number of different votes and elections, mixed bag. The Republicans padding just a little bit their security in terms of the House, very slim majority. There were 2 special elections that took place. Republicans winning both of those, double digits. So it was, pretty significant. Of course, this is to some degree, or had been cautiously painted by the media as a bellwether test on Trump's popularity. Now, you're not going to hear that any longer because Republicans won those special elections. Then in Wisconsin, had what could be very impactful in terms of House races. The liberal Democrat winning the Supreme Court race there, and that was a George Soros-backed judge. And they've been pretty clear that the Democrats, because they cannot win a couple of the districts there, that they were hoping to get the George Soros-backed judge on the Supreme Court so that they could gerrymander the map and essentially rewrite the districts, redraw the districts in order to rig it so Democrats can win. They've been very open about it. It's one thing about the level of, I don't know, dishonesty within the Democrat Party is they've gotten to the point where they just pretty much tell you what it is they're going to do. And they full-blown said, we get her on the court and we are going to try and rig things so that Republicans are gerrymandered out of two of their districts. And so that could have implications on future races. On the flip side, in Wisconsin, they voted, I think it was every single county voted in favor of photo ID, except for Madison and Milwaukee County, and those are counties that are very, very heavily liberal, and so that, of course, should come as no surprise. Some of the latest updates on the domestic terrorist attacks by left-wing activists on people who own Teslas. There was an appearance by Elon Musk, I believe it was on the 5 yesterday, in which he indicated that they know who these people are that are funding this form of terrorism and that they are going to come after them. We've got that audio. And then this new book that is coming out. I know I'm kind of peppering you with a number of things that we're going to talk about today. 2 authors, and it's all inside the chaos of the 2024 presidential election, primarily Biden, Kamala. And what we're learning is what many of us suspected, and that was that, among other things, Barack Obama not only did not believe that Kamala Harris was a good candidate, but was essentially trying to stab her in the back, and he was working behind the scenes to get her off that presidential ticket. He had his picks. He was lobbying some other Democrats to try to get them to come on board and throwing her overboard after the throwing overboard of Joe Biden. So there are a lot of overturning of elections with the Democrats and an attempt to continue to do so behind the scenes. We got weather in a moment. Could be potential storms coming our way. It looks like, in fact, they are. But first, the latest news update.
Oh, I get those text messages all the time, those toll ones, constantly.
What those fools don't know when they spam me or try and trick me into making a payment based off this idea that if you don't, you're going to be in trouble, is even when it's a legit thing, I ignore it. Like, whatever.
Good to know. Your first alert forecast from Ozark's first meteorologist, Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. A tornado watch is in effect for the entire listening area until noon. Today, showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 77. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 49. For your Thursday, rain throughout the day with a high near 61. And looking ahead to Friday, once again, a rainy day in the Ozarks with a high near 65.
Today is so-called Liberation Day. This is the day that a number of significant tariffs are to be announced officially by President Donald Trump, and the labeling of it as Liberation Day is to indicate the stranglehold that we have allowed so many other countries to have on the United States when it comes to tariffs. Tariffs are nothing new. There are lots and lots of tariffs all over the place. And there are significant tariffs that are, some would argue, punitive against the United States of America. I think like rice to Japan, they put a 100% tariff. Of course, when it comes to dairy products to Canada, it's 246, 47%, somewhere around there. This isn't anything new. But because it's Donald Trump, the Democrats in the media have this disinformation campaign going on, trying to sort of create this atmosphere as if tariffs are just something brand new that have never existed. Donald Trump is just using them to our poor neighbors. They're awful. Well, we've been the poor neighbor all this time in terms of taking advantage of it. And listen, some of that's our own doing. I mean, this is a complete lack of desire to put America first by, or at least on even Steven, by past presidents. Trump just being a business guy, you can imagine he gets in there, he's like, what the heck's this? No, I don't think so. Auto imports. The president expected to impose 25% tariffs on all auto imports coming into the United States. Oh my gosh, all these cars are going to cost. No, that's not the case. This is only cars that are coming into the United States, and countries that relocate plants to the U.S. or build their cars in the U.S. are also exempted. So, in other words, jobs. Venezuelan oil. Trump threatening to impose secondary tariffs of 25% on countries that import oil and gas from Venezuela and trade with the United States as he seeks to add pressure on the South American country over its response to the U.S. immigration crisis. In addition to that, a little bit of background. The Biden administration had imposed sanctions. Now, okay, get this irony. Ready? Maduro of Venezuela was not going to hold fair elections and not allow the opposition party to hold primaries and allow the opposition party to select their own nominee. And so the Biden administration said, we're going to put sanctions on you unless and until you allow for free and fair elections. And so Maduro's like, okay. And the Biden administration lifted those sanctions. Now, what Maduro did then, he mirrored, brilliantly so, what the Democrats were doing here in the United States. He just had courts throw the political opposition off the ballot. And also rounded up supporters of political opposition, claiming that they were insurrectionists and that they were a danger to national security. And, of course, the brilliance of that on his part was, how could the Biden administration put those sanctions back on when all he's doing is exactly what Democrats were doing here in the United States to their political opposition? Trump got in and said, no, you violated the terms of having those sanctions lifted, and so there's going to be a reimposition of sanctions. So there's some background in there involved, and there's layers and, number of reasons, response to U.S. immigration crisis as well. Like a lot of things with Trump, it's not simply one issue, but it's a multitude of issues oftentimes. Canada and Mexico. President expected to impose 25% tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico, which were delayed as part of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. Tariffs are in response to the illegal drug crisis happening in the U.S., which sneaks into the U.S. from both countries. In China, Trump expected to impose a 10 to 20% tariff on Chinese imports over the fentanyl and illegal drug issue. The tariffs will take effect immediately. Now, as I've said time and time again, tariffs are a hammer. Hammers can be used to build a house, and they can be used to tear down a house. and they can be used to do a little project over here, little project over there. It is a tool. In and of itself, it's not a bad thing. It just depends on the usage. What's the motivation of the usage? What's the outcome of the usage? Of course, with the media and the Democrats, all they are going to do is point out the immediate negative impact. And I don't believe that those things should be ignored, but I think that we should be thinking, intelligent adults and look at the entire landscape. You have already numerous different auto manufacturing companies that have said we're going to be moving to the United States. Honda, one of them. Hyundai, one of them. There are a couple of others. I think Rolls-Royce, if I recall correctly. There have been numerous different car companies and other industries as well that have said, yeah, we're going to come to the United States because it's just going to be cheaper to do it that way than to have to deal with the tariffs. Those are positive things. Those are jobs for middle America, good paying jobs for middle America. And from a national security implication, that means we're no longer reliant on other countries for those products. That's a huge component of this, particularly when it comes to products like pharmaceuticals. Remember during COVID? We got the bottlenecking of imports into the United States, and there was panic about people with their heart medications and their life-saving medications because we're reliant on China. That gives China power over the United States should they decide to wield it. It is a weapon. I'm not arguing that that means every single product that we as Americans use should, without any question whatsoever, have it manufactured here in the United States and have no sort of trade relation with other countries. But we have to be realistic about what that allows the other country in terms of leverage over the United States. We can't pretend that doesn't exist. There are, and I've heard, I've been in conversations with people in industries that note that a lot of the uncertainty of this is what causes problems with the stock market and problems with price increases and so forth. Yes, but I'm trying to think of the best way to word this without sounding cold or callous, but that's the way that this has to work. There sometimes when it comes to fixing a problem that is very deep and very wide and very entrenched and has been building upon itself for year after year after year, fixing it, yeah, there can be some pain there. That's the way that it is. It doesn't mean that people who are impacted by it should be happy about it. It doesn't mean that we should not, recognize it and have compassion for it. But if we are looking for things to get better and get fixed without anybody in the short term in particular having a level of discomfort, then we're never going to fix it. I mean, never. We've heard no pain, no gain. Whatever it is, whether it is trying to get yourself in financial shape, maybe you have mismanaged your finances and you have to completely and totally change your lifestyle in terms of your spending habits, and you go through a Dave Ramsey thing, and yeah, all of a sudden things are much different for you, and they may not be as fun. But that's the only way to get to a fiscally responsible situation. If you're somebody who hasn't taken care of your body year after year after year, and you've been punishing to it, and you decide, you know what? Nope, I'm turning things around. I'm going to start getting healthy. Guess what? That is not going to be fun for a while. If you are having major reconstruction on your home, you find out you have black mold in your home, and it is essentially gutting that thing in order to get your home so that it is healthy and livable again. There's going to be a period of time where it is not fun. And I don't I do have a level of frustration when it comes to this, not because people are uncomfortable or upset about it, because that is normal, that's realistic, but because there appears to be this lack of intellectual recognition that that is the only way, that that's not Trump's fault. If you have a trainer that you hire in order to help you get in shape, it isn't their fault that it's difficult for you to get up and to run and to do whatever exercises and to change your meal plan. That is difficult because of the decisions that you have made in the past. If you hire somebody as a financial advisor to help you get into a fiscally healthy situation for your personal finances because you just did not pay attention to those things and you did not budget and you went into debt and you filed bankruptcy and they set up a plan for you, when that isn't fun, when that is all of a sudden you're not able to go out with your friends, you're not able to take this vacation, or you're not able to go out and eat as often, you have to scale back, that isn't the financial advisor's fault. That you're going through that change that may be painful in order to get out the other side. That is the fault of all of the decisions that were made in the past. And I think we just have to understand and recognize that we have spent a very, very, very long time at the hands of people who did not ultimately care about the real, true health of this nation, economically speaking, when it comes to trade relations and a whole litany of different areas. Spending, obviously, is another one. And there's just no way to fix that without there being some difficult decisions to be made. And we just have to understand that. Doesn't mean that if you are impacted, in terms of the business that you run or that you own, that you should be happy about it. But it's just like you're not happy changing your diet plan. You're not happy getting out there and walking for 35 minutes a day or doing any sort of exercise. You're not gung-ho about it thinking, boy, I sure am happy this is happening, but that's the way that it is. And that's reality. Sometimes reality isn't fun when you're fixing yourself. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Do we know, are these man show tickets, are they digital? Do you know the answer to that question? Because I mean, the event's coming up this.
I'm not sure.
Friday and Saturday, and we're still allowing people to register. Well, however it is, you'll know when you get contacted if you win. You want to register to win tickets for the 2025 Man Show Expo at Ozark Empire Fairgrounds, April 4th through 5th. Go to ksgf.com, and you can do that there. The tickets, should you win them, also grants you entry into the Ozarks Shred Fest Drifting event. And I'll just take this time to remind you as well, Friday, we will be broadcasting live at Scramblers, our normal Friday road show sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks first meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. A tornado watch is in effect for the entire listening area until noon. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 77. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 49. For your Thursday, rain throughout the day with a high near 61. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll have another rainy day in the Ozarks with a high near 65.
Most of you know, remember Lori Rook. Of course, she campaigned across the state, and in the primary state treasurer position, and she was on this show a number of times. I know she is oftentimes out with the conservative folks there at Scramblers when we do the show on Fridays. She's a great resource for you as the owner and managing attorney of Ozarks Elder Law. There was a real big push for a while about planning your funeral ahead of time. I mean, this still is sort of a thing. That way your family isn't burdened by it. Oh, you pick out your burial plot, you pay for it ahead of time, because you're like, hey, the last thing you want for your kids to have to do, your spouse to have to do is to go through all of that. And what am I have to worry about the money, have to worry about all this, and just so you relieve them of that. That is nothing in comparison to what families have to go through if you do not have proper legal planning laid out for when you pass. Whether you own hundreds and hundreds or thousands of acres of farmland or just a car that you want to leave to someone. The days of old where you just hand wrote a will and signed it, and then, well, you died, and, well, there it is. I guess we know how this works. Those days are over. Government gets involved. It can take years and years to sort it out. I mean, when you look at the hassle of burying a loved one, that pales in comparison to the nightmare that families can be put through without the proper planning, and that's where Ozarks Elder Law comes in. I cannot recommend enough that you make that planning ahead of time. Reach out, consultation, Ozarks Elder Law. There's numerous locations throughout the area, so there's going to be one close to you, ozarkselderlaw.com. Was discussing the tariffs and the need for us, and I know many of you, most of you probably, are capable of recognizing and understanding why it is that's happening and how it is going to be uncomfortable for a period of time, because that's what happens when things are mismanaged for so long and you fix them. But it's not just tariffs. I mean, there is a lot that has been mismanaged for a very long time, and in order for it to get fixed, it is going to take us recognizing that some of these changes are necessary. And you probably have noticed this, and listen, it's easy to be manipulated into believing certain things are inevitable truths when they are not. And one of the ways of manipulation that have been very successful is the belief that unless government forces Americans to borrow money to pay for things, then those things can never happen. You see this any and every time there is an announcement about funding cuts, and not even necessarily funding cuts as in this is what we're used to and now we're going to have less as an organization, but, oh, we were expecting to get this much more and now we're not going to. We survived without it all this time, but we were planning on it, and so it's the end of the world as we know it. And you probably see it all over the place. Any time any organization or government institution puts out a press release saying we've just been notified that because of cuts to this, we will not have these dollars, and here are going to be all the horrible effects of it. I mean, that carries the day, right? Part of the reason that is impactful is because we have been manipulated into believing that, well, that means that that stuff can't happen anymore. A large part of what made this country so great and so successful and advanced so quickly compared to other countries is because we had this spirit of can-do-itness, and we don't need the government in order to do it. Now, I'm not claiming that there aren't places for government, but that's not what made us so successful. Now, of course, you can find an instance here and an instance there in which government funded something, and look at this wonderful thing that happened. But overall, there's a pretty remarkable, and it's just anecdotal, storyline about the Wright brothers versus some other government-funded people that were these highly qualified experts and the attempt of flight. And the Wright brothers, couple brothers working out of their barn, didn't have all this government funding, but at the same time you had, I think it may have been some folks with the university, I don't recall the specifics of exactly who they were, but they had gotten all of this funding, and they weren't people that necessarily had a passion for it and a dream for it, but they had all of this government funding. Well, ultimately it was the Wright brothers who won the day. And I think that indicates a couple of things. One, passion for something goes a long way, further than money takes you. But more importantly, you don't have to have government taking money from other people in order to succeed at things. Does it make it easier? Maybe. Short term. But but what happens is you become addicted to it and you begin to believe you can't do it without it. And that's not good. I see people, one of the more recent, well, there's locally, and you may have seen the news stories. I know I got the press release. It was from a food bank, and because of USDA cuts, I think they cited that, we're going to have this less money and how hard it's going to be, and, because we do this and that and so forth. And I'm not saying that there isn't truth to that. But there's this apparent resignation that people now have. Well, if the government's not going to force people to give us that money, then, well, I guess we're just screwed. No, that does not mean that. Now, it may be harder. It's a lot easier, oftentimes, to just have the government hand you millions and millions of dollars than it is to go out and raise it yourself. Yeah, I get that. But guess what also happens? You're completely reliant, or we allow ourselves to be completely reliant on that, to where when it goes away, it's like, well, what do we do now? I'm not dogging on anyone who has that mentality or attitude. Because it's virtually any human being. Well, if you have the government come along, hey, you need some more money? Think of all you could do with $50 million. Well, yeah, you're going to be like, that's awesome. You become reliant on that. You start doing things with that. You start assuming that that money is going to come along, to where one day when it's like, you know what, either to control you, say, we want you to start doing this instead, and if you don't, we're going to take that money away, and all of a sudden you're no longer in control of your organization. Or the time comes in which what we're looking at right now, a fiscal collapse of our nation as we know it, if we don't change the way we do things. And so we just have to quit doing it so we don't go bankrupt as a nation. And then all of these different institutions and organizations are flipping out and freaking out because they have become addicted to that reliance. And that's just not ultimately a good thing. It, to some degree, I know some people just hate Trump, and so because he's behind it, that's all that matters. That's their driving force for this. But this is a large part of the argument that Trump has been making when it comes to NATO. It isn't because of a hatred of NATO, or it's because Trump understands that the more self-reliant you are, the less controlled you are by outside entities and institutions. And so when it came to NATO kicking in more, having more skin in the game, he recognized that makes NATO stronger. The push that he has made, particularly during his first term, scolding in public Germany for becoming reliant on energy from Russia, telling them, you do not want to do that. Because the moment Russia wants to have leverage over you, that you're going to become addicted to that. You are going to put yourself in a position where you feel that you need that, and perhaps you do need it in order to continue to function because you have put your reliance on them. That gives them control over you. And it's the same thing that we have allowed ourselves as a culture, as a society to do when it comes to our government. And the thing that ultimately made this country great and so advanced beyond the others is that we're sort of these pioneers, and we don't need government to do it, while everyone else had been trained throughout the world to sit around and just wait until government gave permission. Government said, okay, we'll allow you to do it. Government said, all right, we'll get the money for you to do it. And so that resulted in people just sitting around believing that these things can't occur unless government takes money from other people and gives it to us. And we need to, if we want to get back on track and run, whether they're charitable organizations or government institutions. I saw somebody I know who's a doctor, not locally here, somebody I've known for years and years and years, posting a story from PBS, laughably, about all these experts talking about because funding's cut off for this, that we're going to have this, dire effect because they won't have any money. Money, guess what? Money still exists. It's still out there. In fact, billionaires, the people that the left hates so much, they give crap tons of money to research, to organizations, and in the form of grants. The United States of America, time and time again, research has shown, is leaps and bounds far beyond people of other countries when it comes to generosity, not just with their time, but with their money. By the way, overwhelmingly conservative, politically speaking. Liberals, not so much. That also has consistently been shown. We have to break this mindset that if government doesn't fund it, that means it just can't happen, because that's the only place money comes from. I'm not going to sit here and pretend as if that's not the easy route and that it's going to be a lot harder to go through other means. And there will be some people that say, well, you just don't understand, it can't be done. That's the attitude that the rest of the world has always had collectively, while the United States was different. And that's one of the reasons that the United States took that 5,000-year leap. Don't allow that manipulation to take hold of you. Just because something is harder, and that may be obtaining funding for whatever cause or organization because the government's no longer giving it to you, doesn't mean that it can't be done. It may just take a little more work. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoors, the leading full-service landscaping property maintenance company based out of Ozark, Missouri. They cover, Branson, Nixa, Republic, my area, Springfield, of course. They're not just installing landscapes, they do full-blown design as well. And having all that done, a lot of times people will hire design, or you've maybe even seen these online, I know I have, where you can sort of design your own and you pay money, and I'm sure there's AI involved and so forth. But having real true artists and craftsmen that are going to put it into place, also do the designing where they can come. And, I know that's what I had done. Walk around the backyard and look at the landscape, look at what's there. Also look at, hey, if you only want to do part of it now, how can it be done so that when the addition is done a year or two from now, it all looks completely normal and natural? This is what you get with Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. It's landscape, outdoor living space design, drainage solutions, landscape lighting, sod installation, garden bed construction. I mean, you name it. When it comes to outdoor living, they do it. And premium. Absolute premium. Not going to find anyone higher quality, better. Their site, you could check out much of their work, hunterhardscapes.com. That's hunterhardscapes.com, or go to ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements, and you can find it there. A Cory Booker aide was arrested for bringing a pistol to the Capitol. This is the rules for the not for me crowd, the left, that goes on and on about the need and demand for gun control laws, yet half the time they're the ones that don't follow them. A staffer to Cory Booker arrested Monday night for bringing an unlicensed pistol to the Capitol shortly before the New Jersey senator began his marathon speech whining about President Trump and Elon Musk. Capitol Police sent a statement to the Hill yesterday afternoon. A member of Congress led an ID'd staff member around in security screenings at the Hart Senate building office later that evening outside the Senate galleries. The ID'd staff member, who is retired law enforcement, told our officers he was armed. The staff member, 59-year-old Kevin Batts of Jersey, was arrested for carrying the pistol without a license. All weapons are prohibited from Capitol grounds, even if you are a retired law enforcement officer or have a permit to carry in another state or the District of Columbia. We were watching. Why doesn't he just put up? I don't know if you've seen this. Cory Booker. This wasn't a filibuster. He was just getting up there yammering on. Now, it wasn't a filibuster in the sense that he was trying to block something from happening. That's traditionally what a filibuster is. That you don't want something to get voted on because you believe that if it's voted on, then it'll pass. You don't want it to pass, so you just get up there and you talk and talk and talk and talk and talk until eventually the Senate's like, we have other business we have to get done, so fine, we'll just scrap this. Now, the actual true filibuster is no longer done. It's just the threat of filibuster that is enough, which, in my opinion, should not be a thing. You should have to actually do a filibuster. But all that aside, he was just yammering on. And everyone keeps asking why. I'll tell you why. This is another pathetic attempt of a Democrat to try, and he's run for president before, to run for president off of theatrics. This is another demonstration of a Democrat that is, as they say, all sizzle, no steak. And even the sizzle was embarrassing. We were watching on the monitor. I mean, it's just so gross. He's standing up there and, he gets out the handkerchief and he wipes his brow like he's just really selling it. It's like, this is similar to Gavin Newsom and some of the podcast stuff. And to me, this is no different than some of the Sob Squad gals in Congress that did that stupid video, the TikTok of the fighters, like a video game fighter thing. It's all so fake. Lacks all authenticity. And Cory Booker trying to create these. This is the guy that declared that he thought of himself as Spartacus at one point. Just an absolute embarrassment. There is such a vacuum of authenticity in the Democrat Party. If there was just one on a national level, they would essentially have the red carpet rolled out for them. They have spent so long being fake people in which no issue in and of itself is really an issue they care about. It's just a tool to use either for them or against the opposition, whatever it is. That none of the Democrats that have any sort of national recognition have any authenticity left. There were a couple. Tulsi Gabbard was one of them. I mean, you just watched her on the debate stage back when she was running for the Democrat nomination. She was like the one person up there that you could tell she just really genuinely believed. It wasn't rhetorical. It wasn't all of these different sound bites. She was straight up substance. And look what they did to her. RFK Jr., another one. And I'm not saying this, that it means they're always right, but you could tell these are individuals that are authentic in their beliefs. They really, truly have their beliefs rooted in something. They can articulate them and explain them. And what happens to those people? The Democrats kick them out. And then they run around wondering why it is that we can't find someone authentic. Well, when you do, you kick them to the curb. And you give them no place to go other than, the Trump administration or the Republican Party. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. It looks like David Hogg is out of his March for Our Lives organization, as well as 13 of its 16 full-time staffers.
Wow.
The gun control group announced it was cutting ties with 13 of its 16 full-time staffers last week and naming a new executive director, Jacqueline Corin, a 24-year-old individual. So just another great success from David Hogg, who is now the vice chair of the DNC. So he's proven virtually anything that he has been in charge of has turned out to be a failure, and I'm sure that the DNC, under his leadership as vice chairman, will be no different. But slashing 13 of 16 full-time staffers, this organization is like a Doge thing. I mean, are people going to start pitching a fit over this? That's a huge chunk of their personnel. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Where's my other? Here we go. I got papers everywhere.
Got things to talk
I
about.
got things to talk about. We're going to talk with Attorney General Andrew Bailey coming up. He is going to be one of the speakers at Christian County Lincoln Days, April 12th. You are, well, invited to listen to him coming up here in just a bit, but also invited to buy tickets for the event, Dinner by Lily's Catering, for that April 12th event in the evening. Details at ccrccmo.com. We will have a KSGF table there. They have gifted that to all of you, and the way that you get a pair of tickets for that is to register by texting Lincoln. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 417-447-KSGF. Table accommodates 8, so there will be 4 winners, and each winner will get a pair. And later in the show, I think after 8:30, is that when Mark Lamb's going to be on?
I believe
I think
so.
that's when. We had him scheduled to be on yesterday, but he was stuck on a plane. That got delayed. And so that's why that did not happen yesterday, but it will happen today.
Don't jinx us.
Well, you know, what are you going to do? I just feel real good about the fact that he'll be here today.
Okay, good.
He'll be on with us today. Also, later, I want to talk about some of the latest information in this book that was co-written by a couple of journalists. One, Jonathan Allen, a senior politics reporter at NBC News, and the other, Amy Parnes, a senior political correspondent for The Hill. And there's this new book coming out, Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. And these are the things that I do think are a little bit interesting because you learn the truth about what's going on. And it isn't just, oh, here's a look behind the scenes. It is, here's what was really going on, which is the opposite of what Democrats were claiming. And the furthest thing from believing that Joe Biden was perfectly fit. They were back in 23 planning his death within the administration. They did not believe that he was going to live until the end of his term while they are out there telling you, oh, he's just as fit as a fiddle, this guy. I mean, he runs circles around everyone else. The level of absurdity. And if you bought into that, you need to question yourself and stop believing people just because they're on your side. They take advantage of that. And they make you look like an idiot because they get you out there defending the guy or defending whatever it is they're whatever the lie of the day is. And then you go out there and you defend it. And then the next day they admit it's not true and they leave you holding the bag. You look like an idiot. Your friends think you're an idiot. Your family members think you're an idiot. I mean, they may not tell you that. The only ones who don't think you're an idiot are the other ones who are also idiots. According to the book, Obama was behind the scenes trying to sabotage Kamala Harris for being handed the nomination, doing everything he could, believing that she wasn't a good candidate. He didn't want her in there, which from the very beginning, I argued was probably the case. The fact that it took so long for Barack and Michelle to come out and do that endorsement, to me, signaled that they were not at all enthused about it and just felt that they had no other option at that point. And apparently that was accurate. We've got weather coming up in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozark's first meteorologist, Tom Schmidt. Sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. A tornado watch is in effect for the entire listening area until noon. Today, we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 77. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 49. For your Thursday, rain throughout the day with a high near 61. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see another rainy day with a high near 65.
All right, we still have our love letters from the left bracket ongoing, sponsored by Garrison Roofing and Guttering. It is a bracket populated with comments, text messages made to us, sometimes specifically us, sometimes just the station, by people on the left, and we just thought you'd enjoy reading some of those. Go through, pick your favorites. Every week that you participate will be an entry to win a $250 Visa gift card from Garrison Roofing and Guttering. One of our lefty listeners, good old Rob, he is really on fire today. He, among other things, texted that I was a freaking moron and misspelled moron. I mean, listen.
Sounds on par.
I'm not one of these people that looks at nitpicking when it comes to spelling. I think sometimes that is the way people who aren't able to have a legitimate argument, they just look for that sort of thing in order to counter a legitimate argument. But if you're going to call someone a moron, I mean, you got to spell check that, man. Spell check. New book coming out, Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. Couple of different authors. One is a correspondent, senior political correspondent for The Hill. Her name's Amy Parnes. We'll play some audio of her coming up. Also co-authoring Jonathan Allen. He is a reporter for NBC, covers politics, and he was on MSNBC with Morning Joe. And one of the latest juicy tidbits is the fact that the Obamas were in no way, shape, or form, Barack Obama in particular, not only did he not think Kamala Harris was a good candidate, but did what he could to make sure she wasn't.
President Obama absolutely did not think that Joe Biden should continue, according to our sources close to President Obama. And he also didn't want Kamala Harris to be the replacement for Biden. He didn't think that she was the best choice for Democrats. And he worked really behind the scenes for a long time to try to have a mini primary or an open convention or mini primary leading to an open convention. Did not have faith in her ability to win the election. So, and as it turned out, she didn't win, but he was really working against her. In one moment, he had set up a phone call with Congressman Clyburn from South Carolina on the day that Joe Biden handed off the baton to Kamala Harris. And Obama had set up a call with Clyburn for like 5:30 that afternoon. And Clyburn thought to himself, this guy's going to try to rope me into the open convention thing. I better get my endorsement of Harris out there fast so that this is a short conversation.
Wow.
So that's, and when Harris talked to Obama on the day that Biden handed off to her, Obama was unwilling to give his endorsement then.
Now, this, of course, getting a lot of attention because it's the palace intrigue and the fact that Obama he wasn't behind Joe running for re-election, and he wasn't behind Kamala, in fact, working behind the scenes to try and throw a wrench in that. And then the clear, which is missed on the media, but they were part of it, implication here that everything about the Democrat Party in that election was a lie. Everything. I don't know how anyone, clearly people who aren't Democrats, recognize that they cannot be trusted. But I don't know how Democrats continue to listen to these people. It doesn't mean you have to change your political ideology, but to still continue to believe the people that made fools of you? Now, the other part of this that won't get so much evaluation because of its implications is that all of this talk, this book, the maneuvering, the discussion about who is going to be the nominee, none of it had any connection to how the people actually voted. This is the political party that goes on and on talking about defending democracy. You notice there's never in any of these discussions, as we learn about them, any Democrat that says, hey, listen, the people already voted. This decision has been made. Just because we don't like it doesn't mean we can overturn the election. No Democrat said that, at least that we're aware of. No Democrat said, hey, we had 50 different elections in 50 different states. We even moved some of the primaries around in order to help Biden, fend off any sort of, not necessarily a serious challenger, but even pulling 10, 15% away could be damaging. No talk about the election itself. No one's saying just because, listen, we had 50 different elections and the voters chose in each of those elections / caucuses who they wanted. They said Joe Biden, just because polling isn't looking good now, that you don't get to overturn an election for that. You notice no Democrat argued that? None. If we learned anything about the Democrat Party, that is simply the idea of losing an election is enough for them to overthrow a previous election. And then when it came to Kamala Harris, there was no, the one thing that they all seemed adamant about is not letting the delegates have a say in this. They're like, well, we can't do that. That'd be too chaotic. We don't have enough time. When they talk about not having enough time, it wasn't a timing issue in terms of logistically being able to vote, because that's the whole point of the convention. In fact, they moved that up to do it virtually so that no one could challenge Kamala. When they talked about not having enough time before the convention to allow the delegates to vote, what they meant is they didn't have enough time to get everyone in line. They did not have time to force everyone to do what they were told, because there were rumblings that Kamala Harris was not the candidate that many Democrats would want, that many of the delegates would want. That there was talk about Bernie Sanders and AOC and a number of different individuals, and they did not want that messiness. So what do? We'll just cancel that, quote, election as well. The audacity of any of these people to talk about being defenders of democracy, to paint Donald Trump as someone who he questions elections, so he's a danger to democracy, when they completely cancel elections just because they've decided that their guy isn't going to win. They don't like the outcome that they even manipulated in the beginning to make sure was the outcome. You Democrats, I'm just telling you now, you have no no credibility whatsoever when it comes to talking about democracy, when it comes to talking about the vote, when it comes to talking about canceling elections. There was an event last weekend, I think it was, or last week, Tim Walz down in Texas, because he's apparently running for president. And there was some woman that got up and she was talking about the midterms. She's like, if we even have another election, you ought to be talking to Tim Walz. Best I can tell, Republicans have never canceled an election. Best I can tell, Republicans haven't ever just decided, we're going to overturn that election because we don't think our candidate can actually win in the general, so we're going to pick someone new. And that process we have in place to do that, we're not going to use that either. We're just going to decide for ourselves. I don't recall Republicans ever doing that. Yet you get these, I'm sorry, they're idiots. These voters that show up at a Tim Walz event and they wring their hands over fear that their vote won't count or it'll be overturned or stolen from us. Like, your party is the one who has done that. And I love with what ease and just this natural way in which these authors talk about this. The point of the book that is supposed to draw you in and be interesting is just the personalities involved and how it is they're trying to rig the election. Who is involved in what capacity of overturning Joe Biden's election? It isn't the fact that they're doing it in and of itself. It's not you should be outraged because the party that talks about defending democracy actually doesn't really care much about it. No, that's not. It's just as if, well, this is normal. That doesn't even deserve any extra attention because that's just who they are. We're supposed to accept that. And I guess when you've got millions and millions and millions of Democrats that just go right along with it, and the idiotic way that, frankly, these people just followed along, and they're told, by the way, Kamala Harris is so awesome. She's wonderful. You know, the woman that up until yesterday we were saying should be dumped off the ticket because she was so bad. Now today she's wonderful. And then they just went along with it. Oh, that's right, she is. This is so exciting. So exciting. Right off a cliff. They led you right off a cliff. I'll play some audio from Amy Parnes, the senior political correspondent for The Hill, who's the co-author of this book, Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. Next, I'm Nick Reed. New book, Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. The latest rounds of excerpts that are released are regarding Obama working behind the scenes to, just against Kamala Harris. And what we're learning is what many of us knew realistically for the most part would probably be the case, and that these people didn't like Kamala. They didn't think she was a good candidate, but they were just sort of backed into a corner after they decided that elections don't matter and that the voters who voted for Joe Biden, screw them, we're just going to pick someone else. And they had slim pickings. This is one of the two authors, Amy Parnes, senior political correspondent for The Hill, and she's co-author of the book, and she's on with Chris Cuomo on News Nation, and he leads in with a question.
You hear that Obama had floated the governor of Michigan and the governor of Maryland. And when I heard that at the time, Whitmer and Westmore, I thought they should have flipped it, or I thought it should have been Shapiro and he. But of course, that's what would have happened if they played out the process. Did you get any particular insight into what made the short primary or the open convention an impossibility?
It was just too short of a time frame. And, President Obama was calling people at the time. He called people like Jim Clyburn to find out where he was. Jim Clyburn knew that call was coming, and he said, okay, I have to quickly get behind Kamala Harris. And that's sort of how that unfolded. And I think President Obama rather, wanted to kind of see how this all unfolded. He didn't want his finger on the pulse, but he also didn't think that Kamala Harris could win.
Duh. Now, again, as she notes, they determined that there wasn't enough time before the convention. It wasn't a matter of there wasn't enough time before the convention for the people to vote, because that's what they do at the convention. The delegates cast their vote. What she meant is for them to rig it. And that's what they were trying to do behind the scenes there, implement the person that they chose and not allow the delegates on behalf of the voters make that decision. Here is this is a question from Cuomo regarding some of the other players in this, Pelosi and others.
Pelosi and the party said it has to be Harris, or that Biden wanted to pick who it would be?
I think that Pelosi and the party, they were very squeamish on Harris going in. We have reporting in the book that says he goes, she goes. I think a lot of people wanted a primary, but it was a little too late for that.
And finally, the issue of cognitive decline and who knew what when, in terms of how widespread amongst Democrats was this knowledge.
I think every Democrat has a story, and we talk about some of that in here, where they saw President Biden not in the best terms. We detail, for instance, Congressman Swalwell, who was there looking at him. They came face to face at a congressional picnic, and the congressman had to cue Biden as to who he was. This is someone who ran against him in 2020. He's very vocal. He's out there. Someone like President Biden, in Biden's heydays, he would know who he was. He didn't know. We have other details in the book about a makeup artist coming in on his international trips to kind of prep him before meetings with foreign leaders.
They all knew, and they were all lying. It was so bad he was literally forgetting who members of Congress were, people that he knew very well. It was so bad a makeup artist had to prep him before he met world leaders. The Democrat Party is just proven during that election to not care about elections, willing to overturn elections if it isn't going to allow them to ascend to power, and is a machinery of nothing but lies. Attorney General Bailey next. Traffic update. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. A tornado watch is in effect for the entire listening area until noon. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 77. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 49. For your Thursday, rain throughout the day with a high near 61. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see another rainy day in the Ozarks with a high near 65.
Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, Chad recently detailing that he and his family had recently had the pleasure of working with Emily Johnson, describing her as a top-notch realtor here in Springfield, Missouri, and we could not have asked for a better experience. Emily's expertise, professionalism, unwavering dedication truly set her apart. She listened closely to our needs, was patient with us during our extended home search, and provided invaluable insights into the Springfield, Nixa, Ozark, Stratford, Willard, and Republic real estate market, helping us make informed decisions every step of the way. Emily even helped us coordinate renovations, connecting us with excellent local contractors, making sure our new home was exactly how we envisioned it. Her strong negotiation skills saved us significant money, making the process seamless from beginning to end. We highly recommend Emily Johnson to anyone needing an exceptional realtor in Springfield. And what more can be said than that? For all of your home buying needs, your home selling needs, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You can find her at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. Coming up, April 12th, Lincoln Days, Christian County Lincoln Days. I'll be emceeing the event this year once again. Tickets are available. You can register to win tickets for the KSGF table by texting the word Lincoln to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447-KSGF. One of the individuals that will be speaking is Attorney General Andrew Bailey. I know he's been one of the favorites in the past. I appreciate you being with us this morning. I wanted to ask you, as I was playing some audio, these two co-authors of this new book, Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House, and one of the excerpts or areas in which they're discussing is how widespread. I mean, all Democrats knew he wasn't there. One of the stories is that when he came face-to-face with Swalwell, who ran against him for president, and very vocal Democrat, high-profile, Biden didn't even know who he was. It was so clear. I know that you, a few weeks ago, had sent, I believe, to the Department of Justice a letter requesting an investigation into the validity or legalities of some of these executive orders or pardons, because if this guy wasn't even with it, was he doing it? What's the legality here? Tell us about that, if you would.
Yeah, certainly. And I think you're absolutely right. The Democrats were lying, but I would go a step further. This was a fraud perpetrated upon the American people of constitutional proportion. And look, this isn't some crackpot legal theory. This happens in probate courts across the United States of America. If you've got an elderly family member who rewrites their will or creates a trust for the disbursement of their assets after their death, and they're not of right mind when they do it, if they can't actually understand the documents they're signing and why they're signing them and the legal impact of those documents, then those documents can be challenged in court, and that happens every day in probate courts across the state of Missouri and across the United States of America. But we're not talking about the disbursements of assets under a will. We're talking about constitutional authority under Article 2 of the United States Constitution, which vests all executive authority in a singular president of the United States. And yet the evidence that's in the public domain, it seems to be that quantum of evidence grows each day, is that whoever controlled the presidency. Well, that's not how our system is set up. And so I call into question those legal documents. People say, well, he issued the pardons. How do you challenge the pardons? What I'm saying is that if he didn't sign the document, and if he didn't understand what he was signing, and if he didn't have the cognitive ability to understand those documents, no pardon was actually issued, and it's a forgery. And so I think it's important that the DOJ do a review of who had access to that auto pen, who was putting those documents in front of the president. We know that in February of 2024, Biden's own Department of Justice said that he lacked the mental acuity to form an intentional mental state. He could not be guilty of a crime because he's an enfeebled old man who couldn't form an intentional mental state. Well, if that's true, then he couldn't have been signing these legal documents. They have no legal validity at all.
Well, what happens then next? I mean, how does that play out? I believe maybe, I forget Durowitz or someone was noting that really the way that this could end up in the courts when you're talking about standing issues, particularly when it comes to the pardons, is if the executive branch, Department of Justice, decides to prosecute someone who has been pardoned, that would be one way that this would make its way into the courts. Are there other avenues that you can see?
I think the best vehicle to get a legal answer to this question, and ultimately it is going to be up to a court to adjudicate a dispute. But what I'm hearing from President Trump, based on his public statements, is he questions the legal validity. So then if the Department of Justice isn't going to stand by those legal documents that Biden purported to have signed, then it's going to be up to the individuals who receive those documents to defend their validity. And how do they do that? Again, we're talking about a growing quantum of evidence. At first it was Biden's own DOJ, and then it was Speaker Johnson saying that he questioned why the president had signed, or why Biden had signed an executive order, and Biden said he hadn't and didn't remember having done it.
Right.
Now we know that the auto pen was used extensively on everything except the letter that Biden used to decline to run for re-election. And so now you've got Democrats. I mean, his own party is coming out and saying he wasn't with it, and we had to shield him from public view because we were scared that people would catch on. So who was putting these documents in front of him? And so again, it's one thing for the individual who receives the document to defend its legal validity against this growing quantum of evidence. You know, is there a review that can take place and an investigation at DOJ to point out the fraud and the fraudsters that were drafting these documents and recommending them to the president and affixing his name using the auto pen? That might be another vehicle. And so there's a lot of different ways that this could come about, and I think we're just now starting to scratch the surface again as that quantum of evidence of Biden's decline continues to grow. And here's another question, Nick. If somebody was in the public domain questioning your mental ability to sign legal documents, wouldn't you stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Of course I signed those documents. Has anyone heard from Biden?
No.
Why, throughout this entire media frenzy, he hasn't said a word about this.
You know, you mentioned the fact that the only document that he apparently signed was the one in which he was announcing that he was dropping out of the race. You wonder, well, why would he not use the auto pin for that? And it makes you wonder, did he even know where that auto pin was and how to use it? I mean, maybe this is the only time that he really legitimately was aware of the need of a signature, and he didn't even really know how to use that auto pin, and so that's why he did it in his own hand. But, I mean, there's just so many different questions there, of course. We've got Attorney General Andrew Bailey with us. He is going to be one of the speakers at the Christian County Lincoln Days, April 12th. There was that, I think it was historic judgment against China. I'd like for you, if you would, explain that just a bit, where that came from. And then there were some who said, well, that's nice and all, but it's not like we're going to be able to get anything out of it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, look, this is an important landmark decision to hold China responsible for the injustices inflicted upon the American people during the COVID-19 pandemic. My predecessor, our United States Senator Eric Schmidt, filed the suit in 2021. The trial court dismissed the suit, and on my first month in office, we decided to appeal that and took it all the way to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals and delivered a win, got back down to the trial court level and put on our evidence in January, and just a few weeks ago won a $24 billion with a B dollar judgment. Again, this is historic. No other state has attempted to hold China accountable, and the evidence shows China created the pandemic. We know they unleashed it upon the entire world. China lied to the public about it, deceived the public, misled the public, created the medical equipment necessary to respond to the pandemic, and then hoarded that medical equipment to deny Missourians and Americans access to that medical equipment. And so the founders and Congress contemplated that states would have claims, legal claims against foreign entities. In 1976, Congress passed and President Gerald Ford signed the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. That is the statute under which these claims are raised, and the legal right that the state of Missouri has, the proper vehicle to raise those claims, to redress grievances against China for those COVID injustices. And so we're the first state in the nation to do it. And I think this is a blueprint for other states to follow. The judgment will become final at the end of this week, and we've begun trying to identify assets owned by the Chinese Communist government in the United States of America, and we'll get court orders to seize those assets. There's a process under the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act that allows for that judgment to be executed. So if China doesn't want to pay, which that's how little they think of these United States of America, they couldn't even be bothered to show up in court despite the fact they were served process and had an opportunity to put on a defense. I think that emphasizes their level of culpability. But, one would assume, given that they can't even bother to show up to court, that they won't voluntarily pay the judgment. So we'll seize assets and make good on that judgment. They owe the people of the state of Missouri $24 billion, and we intend to collect.
How much of, if we have an estimate, of the assets that China owns that we could get how much of that would be satisfied in terms of what it is that the court said that they owed?
That China owns more than $24 billion worth of assets in the United States of America. It's easier for the state of Missouri to seize assets inside the state of Missouri, but we can work with any willing partner across the country.
Okay.
And so we know that the Chinese government has increased its ownership of agricultural land across the United States of America in the past 10 years. We know they have real property in the form of buildings and other assets. The Chinese government is also very clever and crafty in camouflaging its ownership of assets by disguising that ownership, making it look like a private entity owns an asset or a corporation, but having a high-ranking Chinese communist government official on the board of directors of that corporation. We call that the golden vote. No one on the board of directors of a Chinese company is going to vote against the Chinese communist dictator Xi Jinping. They'll be punished for that. And so that ceases to look like a private asset and more like a publicly owned government asset of the Chinese government that we could then seize.
Well, in a case, if we are able, the state, to seize those assets, does the state then just auction them off? How does that work?
Yeah, look, we get a court order from the United States District Court to have those assets seized. The U.S. Marshals then seize the assets, provide notice to the Chinese Communist government, and then auctions those assets off, and the proceeds are returned to the people of the state of Missouri. It's going to be a lengthy process.
Right.
I mean, getting the judgment is half the battle, and then executing that judgment is the other half. And so this is going to take a while, and we have to identify those assets and get those court orders. But we're not going to give up on this and let this sit. This is an historic win, 6 times larger than any previous judgment obtained by the state of Missouri. So we're proud of the work we've done, and again, we're never going to stop fighting to hold those who inflicted COVID injustices upon the people of Missouri accountable.
Attorney General Andrew Bailey, appreciate your time this morning, and we will see you April 12th in Nixa.
Thank you, my friend. Can't wait to see you down at Christian County Lincoln Days. Encourage your listeners to show up. Look forward to being there.
All right, absolutely. Thank you, sir. We shall see you then. That April 12th date is a Saturday. You can purchase tickets by going to ccrccmo.com, and you can register to win a pair as well by going to or texting the word Lincoln to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. Few weeks away, the grand opening of the new showroom for Pinnaker Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. You can get into a new Honda HR-V, just $299 a month. That's not leasing. That is financing. Own it. New 2025 Civic, $320 a month. You can check out the all-new 2026 Honda Passport, total new redesign. You know, they do that every so often. It's a very exciting time. They have them on site. And on Fridays, they actually have food trucks, different one. They rotate them at Pinnaker Honda. They're looking to buy vehicles as well. So they will offer an additional $1,000 toward your trade when you upgrade to a newer vehicle. I mean, hey, you're going to be updating to a newer one anyhow, right? Might as well take advantage of that. That brand new showroom floor, they're going to have an open house Tuesday, April 29th. But if you're on the market or you want to check out that brand new Honda Passport, there's no reason to wait. You can stop by, and even though you drive by and you look and think, oh, it looks like they're doing renovations, they are still open. So be sure to take advantage of that. Pinnaker Honda. I'm not saying that because I don't believe that there is any panic setting in with the Democrats yet necessarily regarding the school board election. Although I suspect that they worry Kelly Byrne will continue to stay on there. There is the Dave Meyer component as well. Obviously, the establishment does not want him to be on there. But what we have seen in the last couple of weeks is the left shifting tactics, and that is coming out and acknowledging that Huff and Smart are left-wingers, and that acknowledgement is by way of endorsement. You've got Democrats now, Crystal Quaid being one of them, out there saying you've got to vote for these people. Now, this is a shift in tactic, I believe, because they are concerned that they are not going to take away a seat. They already, the left wing controls that school board already, but they'd like to lock it in even tighter by getting Kelly Byrne off there, and then, in addition, making sure Dave Myers doesn't get on there. And what they had done, and they've done this successfully the last few rounds, the Democrats run one of their own, but they pretend that they are a Republican. They have them show up at Republican events, or they'll, for example, Sarah Huff shares the last name, Lincoln Huff, his ex-wife. People think, oh, well, he's a Republican, and so that means she must be as well. And so they're very deliberate, manipulative in the people that they choose, people with name recognition. And then they masquerade them as being conservative or Republican. Well, this has been successful enough that the local Greene County Republicans have said, okay, this has got to stop. All right, we're coming out publicly here in order to stop Democrats from running people as if they're Republicans. And they've been very clear that Kelly Byrne, Dave Myers, these are the people that we support. Because of that, my assessment is the Democrats are like, okay, the cover's blown, and so what we're going to lose in terms of votes, the moderates or the Republicans who are going to realize what's going on here, we need to try to regain by pushing the left-wing activists to come out and to vote. And so that's why you're having these Democrats that are doing this. Now, of course, the news leader is getting in on it as well. They have a story. 2 PACs are heavily involved in the Springfield school board race. Here's who's donating. And what they're trying to do is make you think that Kelly Byrne and Dave Myers, oh, it's all outside money. These aren't, something really strange and nefarious is going on here, as opposed to, Sarah Huff and Gail Smart. I mean, these are just local people supported by other local people. They note in the story, 2 political action committees have become heavily involved in the Springfield school board race, but only one, has been primarily funded by local donors. The Back on Track American PAC, created in 2022 and active in its fourth April election, reported a total of just over $42,000 in contributions, almost all of which was raised in the past month, while United Springfield PAC, created in 23 and active in its second April election, reported $159,000, most of which was raised in late February. Both local PACs filed campaign reports Monday. Back on Track filed contribution reports for donations. The reports in 2025 by United Springfield show that less than 2% came from donors who did not live in Springfield. And that good, wholesome organization is backing Sarah Huff and Gail Smart. Now, Back on Track, on the other hand, I mean, it's just all outside money from other parts of Missouri. And they're supporting Kelly Byrne and Dave Myers, see, so that the news leader is doing what they can to try and proactively make you believe that the good local people are the left-wing Democrats and the people who want to turn things around and get the school district back to a place in which children are actually learning instead of failing, instead of being failed, that those are the nefarious outsiders, and that's the reason you see these. Now, Kelly Byrne has gone to social media in order to clarify disinformation that the news leader is attempting to spread out there. And he notes on his Facebook page, the news leader is reporting that outside PACs are funding campaigns for school board. I'm proud to say that my campaign has accepted no money from any PAC or corporation in this race. I'm the only candidate who can say that. My campaign is funded entirely by local individuals who want to see a stronger SPS. And he's got a chart noting that when it came to special interest PAC money going to the campaigns, Gail Smart, $8,000, Sarah Huff, $27,500, while Kelly got $0. The Democrats desperately want to keep one of the seats lefty and then convert the Kelly Byrne seat to a lefty seat. And it is becoming very apparent that they are now in overdrive trying to make sure this happens, and that the shift. Now, the news leader, and listen, we all know that if they were able to write a story, if you had a PAC with the outside money going to the establishment and the local money going to the non-establishment people, there would never be a story about that. This is done for one and one reason. It's tried to sway the election, which I think most people have come to expect. But the fact that you have Crystal Quaid and other elected Democrats that are out there openly now acknowledging, yes, these are left-wingers and all the left-wingers need to get out and get them in there, this tells us how adamant they are about trying to win this election. And ultimately, it's going to be up to the people of Springfield. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. A couple days away from Friday, we will have our Friday Road Show, our standard Friday Road Show at Scramblers, sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air. We will have a happy hour. Love for you to come out and join us. Have a pair of tickets. Doobie Brothers going to be at Thunder Ridge coming up in September. I'll actually have that pair of tickets on hand. You can come by and get registered, and at 6 o'clock, whomever wins, I will hand you the tickets at that moment. If you've not been to one of our happy hours, it's just a nice time to hang out. Have yourself a nice drink. They do really sort of, I mean, you can have everything from just whatever, your standard beer is to, they do like the smoked old fashions and kind of the higher end stuff and everything in between. Plus, dinner is fantastic too. If you want to have a sit down dinner after happy hour, I recommend you make a reservation. But 4 to 6, come and go as you please for a happy hour, and you can register to win tickets to see the Doobie Brothers at Thunder Ridge. That is on Friday. News in 60 seconds. Real Clear Investigations has a really interesting expose by Lee Fang regarding social media and the Kamala Harris campaign and how much more fake it all was than I think even critics of the Kamala Harris campaign understood it to be. And it is a further demonstration of the character of the Democrat Party right now. And that is no authenticity, just as absolute fake as possible. To the point it's uncomfortable to watch at times, the behavior of the party. And I thought I'd read through some of it because it just shows you to what extent. In really, I think just analytically looking at it makes one wonder if they spent as much, instead of all of the time and effort and money they spent into trying to figure out what it is that they needed to, quote, be in order for people to like them, they spent that same amount of time and effort and resources into just having a belief system grounded in something and going out and honestly trying to discuss that and explain that to people, that they may not lose some of these elections. So far, we're not seeing any real meaningful change on the horizon for the Democrats. It just is more of the grappling with how do we make people like us? And, a lot of times you hear the, well, just be yourself. If somebody's going on a first date or they have a hard time dating people or they have a very hard time, they're just not comfortable in their own skin, being around new people, meeting new people, and told just be yourself. Well, the more you try to be yourself, the less you are. It's just a thing that happens or it doesn't happen. And that's where the Democrat Party is right now, by trying so hard to be authentic, to be what it is that they think is going to make them look authentic. It just makes it worse and worse for them. And the amount of money that was wasted on some of this stuff, it's part of the reason that top Democrat fundraiser, whose name escaped me, left the Democrat Party, because she's just, after years and years and years of convincing people to donate money, many of which she has explained was her own family, and post-election seeing how it was just wasted, just completely wasted, oftentimes essentially just spending it in areas in which the Democrats knew they couldn't win, but their friends ran this marketing center over here, or they had friends who were consultants over here, so they were just basically throwing money at their friends, knowing that it wasn't going to do them any good. And it's one of the reasons of the fundraiser she got out. There's this, anyhow, I want to share with you some of that investigation because the details of it just really make you shake your head. There's what I thought was a pretty funny piece in hotair.com. Democrats assume that a list of credentialed experts is convincing. And increasingly with Doge cuts, we're seeing this. I mentioned I saw someone post, it's in the medical field, not someone local, and it was sharing a PBS story. And, this many experts say that the cutting of this money is going to lead to this. 75 experts sign on for this. All of these experts. And it is laughable because what these people on the left in particular don't understand is that with primarily COVID, average people do not believe the expert label any longer. That's meaningless. Calling someone an expert has about as much impact as calling someone racist does any longer today. Now, they're supposed to have opposite effects. Calling somebody a racist is supposed to make you hate that person, while calling someone an expert is supposed to make you not question them whatsoever, believe absolutely everything they say. Both come from the left, and both have absolutely no credibility any longer because the average person has recognized that they just use that label all the time. Whether a person is a racist or they're an expert or not. And it isn't to say that there aren't actual experts out there in their field, but the usage of experts by the left in order to sell their case is something we've learned that they will slap that label on anyone that just tells them or explains things that validate their belief system. And and a lot of it is self-validation to people on the left. Oh, here are experts that say what I believe, so that means it's true. And I'm going to post it on social media so everyone knows it. But you're not changing any minds because that term expert has been used so dishonestly for Lord knows how long. But again, with COVID, we just really began to recognize it, that it just doesn't have an impact any longer. Traffic in a moment, now news.
These storms are starting to move into the listening area, so the EAS weather alerts, they might be interrupting the broadcast. If you do miss any of the show, you can find it in podcast form, ksgf.com. I'll have it up, especially this hour. It's probably going to interrupt it quite a bit, so I will have that up just right after this hour is finished. The first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. A tornado watch is in effect for the entire listening area until noon. Today, showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 77. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 49. For your Thursday, rain throughout the day with a high near 61. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see rain with a high near 65.
Wanted to share with you a piece from Lee Fang and Real Clear Investigations. And it's got a lot to do with what turned out, and many of us suspected this, the social media excitement over Kamala Harris and just how fake it was. It was done for the sake of excitement, which is part of the reason after a couple of weeks it began to fizzle out, because there was no substance to it. You can only rally people before a pep rally, or you have a concert, and before the artist comes out for the reason that you're there is substance, the music. They get you all amped up, and they got the music going and the lights going. Well, at some point, people are demanding that the music start. Like, okay, where's the band? And, of course, that never happened with Kamala. This piece notes that the abrupt withdrawal last year of President Joe Biden and the Democratic presidential nominee, followed rapidly by his replacement with Vice President Kamala Harris, irked many voters left out by the process. Yet social media seemed to ooze with enthusiasm and Gen Z-friendly hipster appeal. Influencers flooded the web with neon matcha green pro-Harris videos synced to beats from singer Charlie XCX's album Brat, released last year. Remember, I don't know if you remember that, but that was a thing that that artist, there was some sort of tweeting or social media, and there was this desperate attempt to associate Kamala Harris, like she's Brat, and then explaining to us, that gave the media the opportunity to explain to us that, we don't necessarily understand what that means because it's so cool. See, this is what's cool and this is hip. And that's why it has to be explained to people above a certain age. The Poppy Rave videos, gushed journalist, showed that Harris embodied the confidently independent brat vibe conveyed by the music. Social media pages bubbled with memes celebrating Harris as the voice of queer and black youth, in contrast with the Republican agenda of white supremacy. Digital creator Amelia Montooth, in one viral TikTok video, kissed a woman and tried searching for porn, actions her sketch suggested would be banned if Harris lost the election. Harris, a career politician favored by the Democrat Party's establishment, never quite fit the bill as an icon of activist movements, but the sudden influencer buzz seemed to transform the stodgy former prosecutor into an icon of the cultural zeitgeist. As it turns out, the tidal wave of enthusiasm was not entirely genuine. Much of the content, including Montooth's videos, were quietly funded by an elusive group of Democrat billionaires and major donors in an arrangement designed to conceal the payments from the voters. Real Clear Investigations obtained internal documents and WhatsApp messages from Democratic strategists behind the influencer campaign. Way to Win, one of the major donor groups behind the effort, spent more than $9.1 million on social media influencers during the 2024 presidential election, payments revealed for the first time. The amount was touted in a document circulated after the election detailing the organization's accomplishments. The hidden social media effort coached creators on phrases, issue areas, and key themes to disseminate pro-Kamala content throughout the cycle. The effort supported over 550 content creators who published 6,644 posts across platforms TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, and X. Way to Win coached creators on phrases, issue areas, and key themes to, quote, disseminate the pro-Kamala content throughout the cycle, a post-election memo from the group noted. The look behind the curtain reveals that at least some of the image-making around the Harris candidacy was carefully orchestrated by the same type of covert social media marketing often used by corporate brands and special interest groups. Such campaigns provide the illusion of organic support, though the authentic appeal of trusted social media voices. Way to Win, in internal messages, touted its work with a stable of Democratic Party-affiliated influencers and activists, including Harry Sasson, and it lists a whole bunch of different influencers, typically known for travel vlogs, comedy skits, or cooking recipes, and seeded them with, quote, positive, specific pro-Kamala content that was integral in setting the tone on the internet and driving additional organic digital support. The effort often took the form of talking points that were rapidly distributed to the in-network creators. Leopard Strategies. Bro, who is Tim Waltz, said at Abi the Artist, one of the TikTok creators backed by Way to Win. He's a football coach. That's hard, the influencer continued. It's time for Republicans to drop out. It's not looking good for you all. That's an example of a series of internal presentations about the influencer campaign. Way to Win emphasized its data-driven approach. We know what messaging works, noted Liz Jaff, a branding strategist working with Way to Win during a call with big donors last year. She touted the use of an AI-based focus group tool developed by Future Forward, the Harris campaign's primary super PAC. Jaff also explained the process for developing talking points that could be inserted into organic appearing messages and post on social media. Quote, we then convey that to the influencers who take that into their own words. We then test those videos and see what needs to be boosted, she added, referencing paid media efforts to amplify specific TikTok videos or favored streamers. The lofty promises of message mastery, however, often fell short. Way to Win directly financed a series of clunky YouTube shows and liberal identity politics-oriented social media skits designed to bring voters out to support the Harris campaign and Democrats more broadly. There's little evidence that such measures moved any significant numbers of voters during an election in which Democrats lost historic levels of support from key constituency groups. The youth vote, Latinos and black men swung significantly to Donald Trump last year, upending decades of voting patterns. From Way to Win, Elena Glazer, a comedian who starred in the Comedy Central show Broad City, received Way to Win funding for a series of election videos called Microdosing Democracy, in which she half-heartedly endorsed Harris as she lighted a spliff of marijuana. Another TikTok and Instagram series backed by the donors called Gaydar featured interviews quizzing people on the streets of New York City about gay culture trivia with little election-related content. Way to Win also funded a caravan with an inflatable IUD to Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Raleigh, St. Louis, and other locations. The tour, which featured content creators producing posts along the way, was designed to bring attention to claims that Trump would ban contraceptive devices. In an apparent attempt to boost Harris's support among black men, Way to Win directly funded a series of YouTube-style or interview-style talk shows called Watering Hole Media. Jeff Johnson, a managing director with the lobbying firm Actum LLC, who worked as a host for Watering Hole Media series called Tap In, said, I heard a brother say to me, man, I didn't know I was going to be excited when Kamala was selected. One brother said, I'm not even fully sure why. No, seriously, he said, when I look at her, though, she reminds me of my aunt. And I said, yes, so there is the communal piece. The discussion, taped at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago last August, buzzed about the through line from the Black Panthers to the Nation of Islam to Harris's nomination, suggesting her candidacy represented another moment in black politics. The Way to Win sponsored media group sponsored many similar discussions attempting to buoy the Harris candidacy with appeals to racial identity politics. Despite those well-funded efforts, few bothered to tune in. The 7 video programs produced at the DNC collectively garnered fewer than 1,000 views. One video had fewer than 40. Questions have mounted over the campaign spending decisions from Harris and her supporting organizations. The Harris campaign and her super PAC spent over $1.5 billion in the last months of the campaign, with much of the money flowing to consultants and media advertising. Alex Cooper, who hosted Harris for an interview on her Call Her Daddy podcast, was baffled about why the campaign spent about $100,000 on a cardboard temporary studio set that wasn't that nice. Others have raised similar concerns about payments to Oprah Winfrey's production firm. Quote, our 2024 creator program reached key audiences with nearly 1 billion views, but there's more to do and we're applying lessons from last cycle, a Way to Win spokesperson said in a statement to RCI. Sometimes in presidential campaigns, there are times when there aren't any cost controls, observed Mike Muckus, a Democrat strategist in Pennsylvania. The biggest question is whether they had any empirical evidence that TikTok messaging would work. The payments occupy a hazy area of election law. Way to Win structured their funds through nonprofit corporations that paid various influencer talent agencies, firms such as Palette Management and Vocal Media. The money was not listed in Federal Election Commission disclosure portals that show political funds spent during the campaign. While television or radio ads require disclaimers showing the groups responsible for paying for the advertisements, there's no equivalent mandate for TikTok stars or Instagram personalities that receive payments to promote election-related content. Despite some attempts to reform election transparency regulations, minimal progress has been made. The FEC is deadlocked over attempts to form new rules to govern the influencer space, leaving the entire medium virtually lawless regarding campaign cash. Way to Win operates several entities and corporations, most of which do not disclose donors. The group did not respond to a request for comment for more information in this regard. However, the cache of documents obtained, or rather about the influencer campaign, pointed to some clues. Way to Win hosted a series of donor-only events in San Francisco and D.C. with representatives of the Open Society Foundation, the charity backed by billionaire investor George Soros. OSF did not respond to a request for comment. Democrats aren't hardly alone in payola for influencers. Republican campaigns spent several $100,000 on similar social media marketing agencies that tout the ability to seed content with popular accounts on X and TikTok. But the attempted reach and spending of the pro-Kamala Harris 2024 effort is unprecedented. For Way to Win, the group justified the spending sprees as the only way to compete with pro-Trump voices and popular podcasts such as Joe Rogan, which the Harris campaign eschewed. Our goal this year was to combat conservative content domination on Instagram and TikTok. We did that, Way to Win claimed in a triumphant memo to donors after the election. Had more Americans gotten their media from Instagram and TikTok, the December memo argued Kamala Harris would be the next president of the United States. Now, again, this details what was pretty much understood to be occurring, and that was the fakeness of much of these influencers. And part of the reason we knew it is because numerous influencers would go to their followers and tell them. They were approached by the Kamala Harris campaign telling them, if you say what we want you to say, we will give you money. We will pay you to pretend like you like Kamala Harris. And so because of that, a lot of people were aware of it. But you can't fake authenticity. You can't fake being genuine. And the fact that you had so much money being spent by the Democrats so desperately to prove that they were natural and authentic is, of course, ironic, because all it did was further present themselves as being just the opposite. And I love at the end the fact that one of the firms, In It to Win It, or whatever the name of the organization is, declared essentially itself a success despite the fact that it was a complete failure, which, again, is pretty synonymous with the way that Democrats approach most of their failures. It was a great success. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Field's Talk 104.1, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. A tornado watch is in effect for the entire listening area until noon. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 77. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 49. For your Thursday, rain throughout the day with a high near 61. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see rain throughout the Ozarks with a high near 65.
Coming up, we've been promoting the Lincoln Days, Christian County. I will be emceeing the event again this year. It is April 12th. Reclaiming America is the theme. You can buy tickets. It includes dinner, a number of incredible speakers, and there will be a sheriff's forum as well. Locally, Sheriff Brad Cole of Christian County will be one of those individuals, and the tickets are available for purchase, ccrccmo.com, and your chance to win. There's a KSGF table with 8 seats, and we're going to give away 4 pairs of tickets for the seats, and that covers your dinner as well. Text the word Lincoln to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 417-447-KSGF, and that will get you registered. You can get yourself registered up through tomorrow, and then we'll be picking the winners on Friday. The deadline to purchase tickets is the 8th, I believe, of April, so you need to make sure and go ahead and take care of that so that you don't miss the deadline. One of the speakers, we spoke with Attorney General Andrew Bailey in the previous hour. America's Sheriff Mark Lamb is also going to be on hand speaking at the Lincoln Day event, and he joins us this morning. Appreciate your time and your patience. I know you got stuck on a flight yesterday, so you were kind enough to reschedule. Thank you for doing that. And if you would, I know so many of our listeners are familiar with you, your background in law enforcement, but give a bit of a auto bio, if you would, of yourself.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for having me on, and I was going to apologize to you because we had a funeral we had to attend. So, I've been fortunate enough to be the sheriff of Pinal County, Arizona, which is between Phoenix and Tucson. We had struggled with the border for the last 4 years. We were not right on the border, but we are a corridor into Phoenix. So they say that well over 50% of all the drugs that come into America come through Arizona's borders, which eventually had to make its way through my county, which would probably be 90% of those drugs had to come through my county at some point, that and the people. So I know we're kind of getting off into the other piece, but that's where I was for the last 8 years. But I ran for the U.S. Senate in the state of Arizona. I was not successful, but I couldn't run for both offices. So when I didn't win the Senate, I also had to, that was the end of my time as sheriff. And so on December 31st, this last year, I had to retire, and so now I'm in the private sector and still staying very active in the border stuff. I'm currently a law enforcement advisor for FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. So staying active in the border, staying active in law enforcement things.
The play out of all things immigration through the Biden administration, even prior to the Biden administration, and I remember, like I'm sure you do, during that presidential debate primary in which Joe Biden, as a candidate vying for the nomination, sent a message to the world, all of you who were turned away at the border under the Trump administration, if I get elected, you'll be welcome back in. And so it was very clear, as much as they tried to claim that he didn't invite them, he invited them, and then making Kamala Harris border czar seemed to further demonstrate that he had high hopes to get as many people in the country as possible. But the difference between what he deliberately created and with the help of the Democrats and the massive amount of people coming in, and I think most people understood that you did not need legislation in order to fix things, that this was an executive branch issue, but how quickly that border quit allowing people in to the degree they were with Trump in the White House, I think that surprised even a lot of Trump supporters. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do. And it somewhat surprised me, but I knew I would get asked in interviews all the time beforehand. Well, if President Trump gets in there, he says he can fix this right away. Do you think he can? And I said, yes, I do think he can. I do think he can. For some reason, that doesn't sound right the way I said it. But yes, I thought he could actually change it. What he needed to do was actually do the work. See, their messaging was horrible for the last 4 years, and they didn't want to fix the problem. The gates were wide open. People could just walk right across. There was no Border Patrol agents out in the desert. So it wasn't going to take a lot to change that. So what they did was they came in and said, we're no longer letting you in. So they changed the narrative, and then their actions began to match up with their words. They started saying, look, we're going to hold you accountable. We put the Border Patrol agents, instead of making sandwiches and babysitting, they put them back out in the deserts and along the border to where they were actually protecting our border. They brought the military down there. So, yes, it happened quickly. We knew it could happen quickly, but I think even a lot of Americans were surprised with how quickly it happened.
The part for me that I think happened at a quicker pace was the either self-deportation or just the stopping of people attempting. I knew that eventually would occur, but how quickly it occurred, that's the thing that surprised me the most.
Yeah. We worked, even though we weren't on the border, we worked in conjunction with Border Patrol, and there was just nobody out there. There was no Border Patrol agents out there. There was no MSC trucks, which is these radar trucks. And their messaging was saying, hey, not only can you come in, they would say, well, you know, they would loosely sometimes say don't come in, but they didn't mean it.
Right.
And the people knew that. And not only here, when they got here, they rolled out the red carpet and paid for everything and gave them our tax dollars and flew them all over the country. And they gave them cell phones and they gave them gift cards. And we were funding all of that. And the way we were funding it, because the government will tell you, no, we weren't. The way we were funding it was through NGOs, non-governmental organizations.
We are talking with America's Sheriff Mark Lamb. He is going to be one of the speakers at the upcoming Christian County Lincoln Days, April 12th. You know, we're watching these judges that are doing everything they can to stop or slow down these deportations. We've seen so many different attempts to just essentially deny the American people what it was they voted for, whether it was the first Trump administration and the, attempted coup from within, and the, subsequent, of course, there have been attacks on him, assassination attempts, then trying to put him in prison, trying to throw him off the ballot, just time and time again, effort after effort, failed after failed. It appears as if the current attempt is to have a number of these different judges just do everything they can to prevent him from doing what it is the American people voted for him to do, or at least slow it down to the point that much of the effort is going to be spent trying to get it to the higher courts in order to continue on with the efforts. What do you say to people who see it the opposite? They see this as, well, Trump clearly, he's violating the law. Look at all these judges. This is what they decide. What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, the judges aren't deciding it. They're just making a decision. I guess that technically qualifies as deciding. They're making a decision to temporarily put a pause on it. But a court, through due process, has not made a decision to say that what the Trump administration is trying to do is wrong or against the Constitution or unlawful. They're just getting in the way. I have said for a long time that we talk about term limits on politicians. I think you really need more term limits on bureaucrats and how long they can serve in Washington, D.C., and you need term limits on judges. Judges have become some of the most destructive pieces of this country because they have legislated from the bench. You also have judges who are left-leaning, who let people out, illegals out of their custody. I just did an interview last night on Fox where we were talking about a couple Guatemalans who are here illegally who had been charged with rape of children, and they were released on $7,500 bond. Another one was released on zero bond. That's a judge issue. These are judges that are letting people back out into our community. And then you have these judges legislating from the bench. So it has been a real problem for a long time. We struggle with it in law enforcement. Judges can be a real challenge for us because we do a lot of hard work to put somebody in jail to keep the public safe, only to have a judge release them. Or a judge to rule against us in something that was clearly a constitutional thing that we could do. You'll have a judge rule against you. So judges have been a problem for a while.
You obviously are like right there, if you will, on the ground. You have been when it comes to much of this, and fortunately, because of excuse me, I think a lot of it just Elon Musk opening Twitter, now X, back open to freedom of speech and lack of censorship. Americans were able to really see the reality of what was going on, and that was assisted by DeSantis and Abbott also busing a number of these illegals to blue cities. And so there were a number of things that I think got the average American closer to understanding the real life implications of these. But that being said, I'm sure there's still so much that occurs that you see, you're privy to, or that you've seen that you think, man, people just have no idea. What would be something that you feel most Americans, even those that try to stay in tune with what's going on with this, really don't understand the depth of the problem? You know what I mean? Am I making sense with that question?
No, I know exactly what you mean. Here in Arizona, when we had a Republican governor, or Governor Abbott in Texas, when they were busing people to New York or Chicago, for every bus that Texas sent, our government sent 10 times that many buses. So the government was truly the ones that were actually busing the people and flying them. They also were flying people in from other countries. Not even, they were bypassing, they were using the CBP-1 app. Another thing that I think was a real big problem that most Americans don't realize is how much we funded this. They don't realize the amount of money, and until, this is why they're so upset with Elon Musk, because now you have, first of all, they can't get anything to stick on President Trump. They tried charging him, they tried killing him, they tried everything that they could. And so what they've done is they've got a new villain now, and their villain is Elon Musk. And really it's because he has tapped into their money sources. And what has been their money source? It's the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations. We are now seeing the amount of money that has been funneled through these NGOs to their little pet projects and to things that, and one in particular was the border. That border bill, and I'll just finish it off with this, so I don't go on too long. That border bill that they wanted to pass, that bipartisan border bill, was garbage. But just a couple pieces in there, they had $2 billion going to the NGOs here in America that were already aiding and abetting in the human trafficking, who are already actively bringing people into this country. And they wanted to give another $9 billion of our tax dollars to the State Department, which ultimately would have ended up in the hands of the UN for what they put in there as global migration. So I don't think Americans understand truly how much of our tax dollars went to funding this invasion that we saw over the last 4 years. And, you know, we would plead with them to stop funding these NGOs, but they knew that that was the honeypot. And now that Elon Musk is exposing that, look at the ire that they have shifted onto him.
America's Sheriff Mark Lamb, again, he will be one of the speakers at the Christian County Republican Central Committee Lincoln Days, April 12th. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Nick. I look forward to being out there with you.
And again, for those of you who want to purchase tickets, you can do so by going to ccrccmo.com. That's ccrccmo.com. And register to win your tickets. If you want to win a pair of tickets, we got a KSGF table. The Christian County Republican Central Committee kind enough to donate one for the listeners. Text the word Lincoln to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. You have until Thursday to do that, and then if you win, you'll get a pair of tickets. And we'll have 4 winners on that. And purchasing again is at ccrccmo.com. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Well, we have some pretty strong storms moving through the listening area this morning, and even more rain in the forecast over the next couple of days. Now, if you experience any type of drips, leaks, missing shingles, don't go with a random door knocker, because 99% of the time they won't have your best interest in mind. I want to recommend my go-to guys, and that would be Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections and emergency tarping services if you do need them, and they service the entire KSGF listening area, so it doesn't matter if you are in Branson or Bolivar, they can help you out with all of your roofing needs. If you do find yourself in a situation where you need a whole new roof, the Pyramid Roofing Company does also offer a military and first responders discount out there as well. So over the next couple of days, if you find yourself with a roofing issue, schedule that free roof inspection with Josh and his team. Now, you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
On a daily basis, we continue to see acts of domestic terrorism against people that are perceived as Trump supporters or Elon Musk supporters. The daily, again, attacks from left-wing Democrats. All of this, let's not forget, we spent 4 years being told that parents who showed up at school board meetings were the ones that the Patriot Act needed to cover, and MAGA hat wearing individuals, white supremacists. That's the people that one day were going to pop up and start attacking individuals. And the LGBT community, as soon as Trump got elected, I mean, they were getting guns because all these Trump supporters were going to start attacking them. Yet daily, it's the other way around, of course. You have these left-wing activists that continue to attack people as they perceive as being Trump supporters. Elon Musk was on, I believe this was the 5 last night, indicating that they know that much of this is funded and that they have an idea, they know who some of these so-called generals are.
Attorney General Bondi has said the same thing. I believe that is exactly what will happen.
Do you know who they are?
We're coming for them.
Do you know who those generals are?
We know. We do.
Yes. And hopefully the prosecution will be for RICO and an organized criminal enterprise, which makes the penalties even more serious. And now to Jessica.
Yes, absolutely. These are serious crimes where the organizers and pushers of mass violence will go to prison for a very long time.
That's right. Okay.
And I hope they see this segment.
We had a couple of stories yesterday. One about a 70-some-year-old man who just flat ran over someone that got out of his vehicle because he had Trump flags on it. A couple of stories today. 63-year-old man in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, arrested for throwing screws and nails in the driveways of Trump supporters. Alaric Dahlberg arrested on charges of harassment, disorderly conduct, and related offenses on allegations that claim on several occasions he threw nails and screws around parked vehicles belonging to individuals who support or who voiced or showed support for President Donald Trump, reports NBC Philadelphia. Police added that Dahlberg allegedly threw nails and screws in parking lots where he merely believed Trumpers, in his words, might park. Per the court documents, October 30th, 24, Dahlberg's alleged to have thrown the nails and screws from his vehicle as he passed by a home that displayed several Trump Vance campaign signs, and the police report goes on. A Dallas man whose Tesla Model X was vandalized in the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport parking lot is suing the vandal for more than $1 million. Good. The suspect, Rafael Hernandez, arrested March 22nd on a criminal mischief charge by the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office after he was recorded by the Tesla's built-in camera striking the left side of the electric-powered vehicle. The victim, who is remaining anonymous, was traveling when his Tesla was damaged in the airport parking lot. In the footage obtained by Fox, Hernandez can be seen pulling an object out of his pocket and forcing it into the side of the Model X. The Tesla owner told Fox News Digital in an exclusive interview that the motives were wrong and Hernandez's acts were intentional. It's for a judge and jury to decide, based on the facts, what his punishment should be. I believe strongly I was targeted because my car is a Tesla. I didn't even realize that this nationwide Tesla attack was a thing until I was thrown into that world. What's important to me is that it happened. It was unintentional. It was wrong. As a result, I've been thrown into a nightmare, and I don't want this to happen to anyone else. Yes, maybe some million-dollar lawsuits are the answer. And there's a posting also, hands off. Indivisible in the Ozarks fights back. Location, South Campbell Overpass, Saturday, 12 to 4. About the event, Donald Trump and Elon Musk think this country belongs to them. We're fighting back. They're taking everything they can get their hands on. Our health care. Really? They're taking people's health care, our data, our jobs, our services, and daring the world to stop them. This is a crisis, and the time is to act now. The Mass Mobilization Day is a message to the world that we do not consent to the destruction of our government and our economy, blah, blah, blah. Hey, guess what? That's called democracy. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe you've talked about it. Maybe you've claimed you're a supporter of it. You know, this is why people elected him. I love these people that go on and on about the people have spoken, elections matter, democracy, listen to the will of the people, until the people say, hey, we want this guy. Then we have to stop him at all costs. So much for democracy. I want a great homeloan.com. All of your home loan needs. Forget not the benefit of first going to iwantagreathomeloan.com, especially if you're going to be looking at homes. Maybe it's the weekend, open houses. You're open to a new home, but you think to yourself, I'm not going to go through that process till we find one. Don't make that mistake, because that means if you do find the home and it's an open house and then someone else likes it as well, and you say, hey, we want this. Let's make you an offer. But you haven't gotten that letter saying that, oh, yeah, you're covered for the loan amount, and the other guy or gal does have that, guess who wins, guess who loses. So make that your first step if you are in the market to buy a new home. Even if you're in the very early stages, you want to first go to iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. Any extreme weather, tornado warnings in particular, of course, keep listening, and we'll have alerts on that throughout the day if necessary. Otherwise, Glenn Beck is coming up next. I will talk with you tomorrow. I'm Nick Reed.